Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of the Nerd Federation podcast. I am your host, Will Hernandez, and this is take 2 of episode 2. So, I am recording on Thursday morning, November 30th, and the whole plan of this podcast was to come out every Wednesday. So, midday Wednesdays. So what happens, I start recording the podcast on Tuesday, I do the monologue, I do my intro, and it's getting late, and I thought, okay, well, I'll delay this until tomorrow, I'll record the rest of the podcast, and then get this out the door on Wednesday. So, recorded the rest of the podcast yesterday, on Wednesday, and came this morning into my office to publish the episode, and the episode is nowhere to be found on my desktop because you convert it to, an MP3 file and then upload it to the hosting system, and then it goes on its way to all of you. And, so nothing on the desktop this morning. And then I figured, I still have the episode itself, the file in GarageBand. I'll just go in there and do it all over again as far as doing the conversion. And I hit something and I completely fucked up the track and basically deleted the episode. So here I am once again recording episode 2 over again. But you know what? It's okay. It's still early enough in the day before the day job starts that I can at least do the monologue, do the intro, and I will finish it up during my hour lunch break that I am allowed to take. And I'll finish up the episode then, and then get it out at some point today. But man, what a kick in the balls. I didn't have any issues recording episode 0. Didn't have any issues recording episode 1, and here we are, the third real episode in, and I'm already having issues. So, hopefully, that is the last time. But, as I did mention on episode 1, by the way, this is a pro wrestling and video game podcast. How can I forget to kind of mention what this podcast is about? So, if you want to get the lowdown about me and why I started this podcast, go to episode 0. It's there in the archives, as they say. But I had mentioned last week that I was going to miss Survivor Series because I was going to be in Montreal with my girlfriend for our 1-year anniversary. And I have to admit, I kind of forgot about Survivor Series in a way. I did watch it, and I will talk about that later. I watched the whole thing on Tuesday. Thank God it was less than 3 hours, which was kind of crazy. But I don't know. I think the show overall fell flat, and I will get into that later on in the show. But to start kind of today is, going into my intro here for the podcast and kind of looking at, what happened on Saturday, as I'm writing down timestamps here for the show. So what happened on Saturday with CM Punk coming back? So I'm sitting in the Airbnb. We're getting ready to kind of call it a night on Saturday night, and I get a text from my brother. And he sends 3 emojis with the exploding head. And when he does that, I know something major has happened. And when he did that on Saturday night, I basically just texted him back, "Oh, is he back? Did he show up?" And my brother was like, "Yes, he was there." So, I guess not surprising. In many ways, I think people kind of figured that CM Punk would show up again in WWE after everything that happened with AEW. And it's just kind of funny who knows if these things are true. I read this morning when I was in the gym that apparently there's a behavioral clause in his contract that if he acts up, he's out of there. So who knows if that's actually true or not. But the one thing I did want to talk about to kind of start the show was just how him returning to WWE in a way is a full circle moment for myself because of my personal journey with pro wrestling and the way it really changed throughout the years because of CM Punk. And if you remember, and I haven't told this story yet because I kind of want to save it for his re-debut, his return to WWE. But if you remember when they started, so when ECW was being rebranded, God, yes, I know it's awful. And they were going to be on the Sci-Fi Network. And when they started showing those viginettes for CM Punk, that he was coming to ECW, that, I remember the first time when I saw him, because I didn't know. I wasn't watching Ring of Honor. I didn't even know Ring of Honor was a thing back then. So when they show those viginettes, and you see this guy who looked completely different from everybody else that you saw out there, the tattoos, the hair, the piercings, he wasn't jacked like we've become accustomed to in WWE. I was intrigued by him. And the way and I can't remember exactly what those promos were. You know, I don't know if he can either. But to look back and say, okay, this is different. I'm in. I'm brought in. And about this time, when you're looking back at the time of when, you know, he was coming back, coming into WWE, what are you looking at, the mid-aughts? Google was really starting to become more of a tool for people. So what did you do? What did I do? You go to Google and you type in CM Punk. And that changed everything. Doing that changed everything for me and the way I view pro wrestling and what pro wrestling could be. Because for years, what was I fed? WWF, WWE, obviously WCW during the Monday Night Wars, because I latched onto that because of the Monday Night Wars. I mean, that was just a thing. If you're of a certain age, like me, 44, you were well entrenched in watching how everything played out in the Monday Night Wars. So you didn't really know. I knew of TNA. I knew there was a TNA. Like, I knew that it was, you know, there was something. But really, only knowing WWE, and I did get exposed to ECW and quickly found myself watching that when I could. But most of it, you know, most of my upbringing was watching WWE. So when I did that search for CM Punk and this ROH thing comes up, I'm like, well, what is this Ring of Honor thing? And then you take a deeper dive into Ring of Honor and you start doing this research and you find out that it was a spiritual successor in many ways to ECW and that, the old ECW, the ECW that I grew up on. So you get into that, and then you start going deeper into the rabbit hole and learning about New Japan and learning about these other wrestlers that were associated with a Ring of Honor, like a Samoa Joe, like a Bryan Danielson, like a Jimmy Jacobs, the Briscoes, the Motor City Machine Guns, just on Kevin Steen, El Generico, on and on and on and on and on. You find out about these guys. And a new door was really opened for me that day to where I started paying attention more to Ring of Honor. And I remember going to Ring of Honor shows when I lived in Chicago. I would go whenever they were in town. And I'll never forget, and I told people this story, not all the time, but whenever I kind of talk about this subject, going to, I believe it was my first Ring of Honor show. I'm going to have to go back and look and see what year. I'm thinking it was, if I'm not mistaken, 2008. It was right about, it was a little bit before the time when Colt Cabana left the Ring of Honor to go to WWE. So it was around that time. Definitely before that time. And I'll never forget. Whoa. By the way, there goes, that's staying in, by the way. I'm not going into, it's my pay rent reminder. Rent's due tomorrow. Anyway, I'll never forget watching the Briscoes against Motor City Machine Guns and thinking, my God, I didn't know tag team wrestling could be that exciting. I mean, really, honestly, I didn't know it was possible for tag team wrestling to be that exciting. And that's what those guys brought that day. They brought the house down. And the thing was, I don't even think that was the main event of the show. And we're talking about something that was not a pay-per-view. But these guys busted their asses in the ring. And I just could not believe that this was tag team wrestling. That this was what tag team wrestling could be. And just the amount of offense and you know, the false finishes. And they sold, man. And they sold. They really did sell. So I don't want to hear anything, oh, you know, those guys were ruining pro wrestling back then. No, they were selling. Again, everything changed. Everything changed for me that day. Everything changed for me at that event to where that style of pro wrestling, that more athletic style, really appealed to me. Because it really was like a fight in a movie in many ways. And I was just I got bored with the whole WWE presentation of punch, kick, slap, body slam, Irish whip, clothesline, small packages. That was just boring to me. I found that boring. And I saw some of that when I was watching Survivor Series this past week, and I'm like, oh man, they're still doing this stuff that I just cannot stand about the WWE version of professional wrestling. So, going back to the whole Punk thing, him showing up on Saturday night in WWE again and in Survivor Series, it did tickle something inside of my brain and told me, wow, I'm really kind of full circle again with this guy. And I mean, listen, I'm not dropping AEW to watch WWE full time. That's just not going to happen. That boat has sailed. It really hasn't. It sailed a long time ago. But does WWE have my attention now? Yeah, it does. And I'm going to be curious to see how this all plays out at the end of the day. If Punk can play nice with everybody in WWE and make some magic happen, because I think that there is magic to be made. Listen, as bummed as I am about the fact that we're pretty much never, I don't want to say never, but we're probably never going to see, not never, whatever you want to use there, Kenny Omega versus CM Punk. And those guys could have did great fucking business together if they just would have put aside their differences. We might never see that match, but we could see other matches. We could see Punk versus Roman Reigns. I think that would be intriguing. Punk versus AJ Styles is something I would love to see. Punk versus Walter aka Gunther, Punk versus Braun Breaker, Punk versus Seth Rollins. That seems to be the direction they're going to go in to begin with. So there is some magic to be made there, and I am looking forward to that aspect of it. But that doesn't mean that I turn my back on what AEW brings to the table and why I do like still to this day AEW. And I'm going to get into that as the weeks go by here with the podcast. But coming back from the other side on the break, what I do want to kind of get into for the rest of the episode is talking about the current direction of AEW on the heels of Punk returning to WWE, kind of what I feel needs to happen. This whole QT Marshall thing leaving, that kind of exposed, not necessarily exposed some things, but that's gotten some people talking. I am going to talk a little bit about Survivor Series and how it kind of fell flat with me for a few reasons. I love the fact that it was under 3 hours. Don't get me wrong, but it fell flat with me, and I'll get into that as well. Then in the video game portion of the podcast, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I picked up for Black Friday and some of the deals there. Then I'm going to get into the Xbox tax drama, which is just kind of so ridiculous. And then to top things off, I'm going to talk about what I am not playing. Yes, I have not been playing games the past couple of weeks for various reasons, but I will talk about that a little bit and kind of what's going on there when we come back from the break. So stick around and I will be back right after this. And welcome back to the Nerd Federation podcast, episode number 2 of this prolonged recording that I'm on. Listen, here's the thing. They say that you need to get through your first 10 episodes of a podcast before you really kind of spring into long-term success. And we're only on episode number 2. And man, if something fucks up along the way in recording, you just got to keep doing it, because the key is to be consistent, even if you're coming out a day later than you wanted to. So it is what it is. I want to springboard off of what I talked about in the monologue with the return of CM Punk to WWE, because a lot of attention has been paid to AEW right now and what may or may not be working in AEW. And I think this idea that AEW is in trouble is bullshit. Now, am I saying that AEW is perfect? Absolutely not. It's definitely not perfect. It does have some issues, some glaring issues, I think. And I think in some ways they've shot themselves in the foot on occasion. And I do think that the CM Punk situation has fucked them up in a lot of different ways, just as far as storylines are concerned. And I do think, they've had injury problems as well, which have not hurt. So, which have not helped them, I should say. So I think there are various things that are going on of their own doing and not of their own doing. But I think, again, to say that the company's in trouble, despite, TV ratings that are probably not up to par, ticket sales that are probably not up to par. I'm not denying that. And I think that they should focus on going back to smaller venues next year. And it kind of appears that that's going to happen, at least from some of the things that I've seen already announced for shows for next year. But I do think that this idea that they're in trouble, again, is bullshit. Now, what do you do to improve and to get people talking about AEW again? I think this whole thing, supposedly, reportedly, even though QT Marshall put out the tweet about him leaving AEW and this kind of change of direction with the company, and then later it came out that Tony Khan wants to go in a more New Japan pro wrestling style presentation. And I'm going to take a pause there and talk about that. That's not necessarily a bad thing. As somebody who became intimately familiar with New Japan, I would say it was very much during 2018, 2018 era. And that was, the Elite, the rise of Bullet Club, Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks doing their thing over there, because I became very enamored with those guys. I really do. And I still think, personally, that Kenny Omega is the best pro wrestler in the world. It's a toss-up between him and Bryan Danielson, honestly. It really is. But, so I see what they're saying about that presentation. Because, listen, New Japan Pro Wrestling, the king of sports, right? It is the one thing you need to know about the way New Japan is viewed in Japan is that, yeah, it's more of a sport. It's covered like a sport. They've got press conferences. They have coverage in newspapers and magazines. And the G1 is this huge tournament every year. And the New Japan Cup is another tournament that happens earlier in the year. Right now they're going through the World Tag League. They've got these different tournaments for the junior heavyweights and the junior heavyweight tag team title. So I get it. I understand. A lot of the storytelling happens in the press conferences. A lot of the storytelling happens when a wrestler will come out and challenge another wrestler who's just been through the gauntlet in a match. And then you kind of build a story through like tag teams and tag team matches and things of that nature. So is that necessarily a bad idea? I don't think so. But here's the issue, I think. And this occurred to me when I've been getting caught up. I was watching Rampage earlier this week. And you had Diamante and Chris Statlander going at it. And you had, I was going to call him Taz. You had Hook and Rocky Romero going at it. And listen, Chris Statlander and Hook are established commodities in AEW. Diamante's been on and off AEW television, and she's been doing stuff in Ring of Honor with Mercedes Martinez. And Rocky Romero, that dude's all over the place. We know he's more of a quote-unquote hand. But I love Rocky Romero. I've loved him since the original Ring of Honor days. But here's the thing. I'm looking at this match, particularly the Chris Statlander and Diamante match. And when Diamante came out, the crowd didn't really give a shit. They did not care about her. And I think the way you make these matches, this is my personal opinion, and this is kind of what that I've seen over the years from my taste. I think that if you tell more story, and if you make me care about Diamante, even if she's supposed to be a heel, I'm going to care more about those matches when she's out there. I care more about Kenny Omega matches because of I have come to understand him as a personality through promos and through storytelling and his work in the work in the ring. I don't think we get enough of that, honestly. And I don't know why it's weird to say that Kenny Omega is underutilized in many ways. I really do think that. But, you learn to care about these wrestlers through their actions in the ring, what they say on the mic, and how they respond to the different storyline situations that they're in. And I don't think that AEW should get away from that at all. I think that they still need to have story in there, because I do think that that is a way to help the crowd care more about the wrestlers that you're seeing on the screen. And here's the thing, you got to get that casual audience to care more. The hardcore folks, the ones that are there week to week and know who Diamante is from her time in Impact, and know who Mercedes Martinez is from her time in Ring of Honor and Impact and even a little bit of NXT, like, those people are always going to be there no matter what. You still got to get the casuals. You gotta, if somebody's flipping the channels and they come upon a Diamante Statlander match, how do you present those people like after the fact? And it looks like they're building some kind of story again with Statlander and Nightingale and Diamante and Mercedes. So there's something there. And you know what? That was a really solid match. I enjoyed watching that match. I thought it was really good. So now you got me intrigued about Diamante based off her work in the ring. How do you now expand upon that and really, really make me care about this wrestler? And I think you lose that if there's less focus on storyline stuff. And listen, the past few weeks, AEW has done a pretty good job of building story. I didn't watch Dynamite last night. Just didn't have the time. It's recorded. I will eventually watch it, but I did kind of see what happened with the whole devil mask followers attacking MJF, and then Samoa Joe came out to help. So they've done a pretty good job of building that storyline. I think it's getting a little old, to be honest with you, but I'm being patient and kind of seeing what the payoff is. And the whole thing with Adam Cole being intertwined, and the whole thing with Roderick Strong and the Kingdom being intertwined. You've got the storyline of again, Joe and MJF, Wardlow and MJF, and how maybe all these things are intertwined in some way. Who the fuck knows where Jack Perry is? That could be another kind of a little twinge, a wrinkle, I want to say, in the whole plan there. So there are things going on. You have the stuff with Andrade, CJ, Perry, and Miro. You've got that storyline going on as well. So there are things there, and I'm blanking now on other storylines, current storylines that are happening. And listen, I went through this. I actually went through a list of 5 to 6 in the recording last night. So excuse me if I'm blanking here. That's not to say that there isn't storyline going on, because there is. Look at the whole thing with the Don Callis family is another one. Kenny Omega and Chris Jericho. We're going to get something with the Young Bucks. They're going away for a little bit, which I called on Twitter. Go check it out. Nerd Fed Podcast. I called that. Seen that a million times where, Young Bucks put this thing on the line, put the stipulation, put their tag team thing on the line. They lose. They go ape shit after the match, and then they storm off. And then a few weeks go by, and they're back and badasses or whatnot. And supposedly the plan is for them to be these heels again, like asshole heels in the way they were in Bullet Club back in the day. So I am excited to see that. So again, there is story there, and I think the quickest way to get back to telling some stories is to implement the ranking system again. I don't understand for the life of me why this went away. Implement the ranking system again, because then you instantly have meaning for these one-off matches, because you're jockeying for position. It's a simple, easy story to tell. And if you want to take things a step further, and we only really saw this when Private Party beat the Young Bucks, But you have the occasional upset. You have number 5 beating number 2. So not only do you have that NCAA tournament style upset, that sports style presentation, you take things a step further. An example, and I'm going to use the Young Bucks and Private Party as the example here, because that's something that did happen a couple of years ago, where you had the young Private Party beat the Young Bucks, right? So let's say, I forget what Private Party was ranked at the time. They might have been a 5. So you had the 5 beat the number 2 team in the Young Bucks. So then Private Party moves up to number 2, right? Because that seems fair. You beat the number 2 team, you should move up to number 2, and then maybe the Bucks drop down to 5, or maybe they drop out of the top 5 to begin with, right? So now you have Private Party going up against the tag team champs. I forget who the hell the tag team champs were at that time. But during that match, here come the Young Bucks, and they do something to cost Private Party the match. Tag team champions win. Private Party now has to go to the back of the line, but we all know what happened. Then you have a few weeks of these teams going back and forth about what happened during that match. You build something up. You talk about the history of Private Party and the Young Bucks, and Private Party looking up to the Young Bucks, being under the wing of the Young Bucks, being brought into AEW. You see where I'm going here? You build up that storyline, okay? Then you have some matches. You have some 8-mans or some one-on-one singles matches between various members of the teams or their respective cliques. I don't think Private Party was in a faction at that point. God, remember that era? So many damn factions in AEW. Jeez. See, that was one thing that they changed. So going back to the storyline, at some point you have a blow-off match to the feud. Whether it's a cage match, whether it's a street fight. So you build a story for 4 to 6 weeks. It's not, I don't know. Maybe I'm just simplifying it and I just don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, but I don't understand why you can't do things like that and use that ranking system as a crutch. So, ranking system is one kind of way they can instantly improve things. I think they got to stop talking about WWE. I didn't watch the MJF promo, but I heard that he mentioned Punk and WWE and God knows who else. I don't know, man. I think in the beginning I thought that was cool. I really did, because I think a lot of long-term WWE fans who finally turned over to other avenues of pro wrestling resent WWE turning into what it turned into. Kind of this kid-friendly, Marvel-esque dialogue that you saw on a week-in and week-out basis, and not letting the athleticism of their wrestlers shine through. I still have a lot of resentment, over that. So when you had AEW wrestlers bad-mouthing WWE, it was like, yeah, fuck yeah, take that, you fucks, take that, WWE, fuck you, Vince. Your audience of one, fuck your audience of one. Fuck listening to the fans. You never listen to the fans, really. So when that was happening, it was like, okay, yeah, here come the renegades. Here come the underdogs. But I think it got to be a crutch at times. And they got tiresome at times. And they've kind of sort of moved away from that. But then MJF kind of brought it right back up, last night. So I wish they would get back to that. Get away from that, I should say. 3, no more fucking important announcements from Tony Khan. They got to stop with that shit. They really do. Because a lot of those announcements kind of lack teeth. They really do. I mean, to have to talk about the on-sale date for All In, nobody gives a fuck. And then you have people tuning in to watch the whole episode just to see what was going to be announced. Just stop with that stuff. Let the action and the words on the screen do the talking. Get back to what got you that popularity to begin with. Now, there are some things that they can't control. I truly do think that the injuries really fucked with them. CM Punk getting hurt was bad. It wasn't good. It wasn't a good situation because I think it just kind of fucked up the flow of everything that was, and I'm getting, hurt as in when he hurt the ankle the first time around. And then obviously the second time he tore a tricep, but he was suspended anyway. But then you come back and you build Collision around this one person. I thought Collision was doing a great job because they were really focusing on story, on Collision with Punk on there. And then all of a sudden, now with Punk gone, Collision sucks. I mean, there's no way, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's not the strong show that it was being it was different. It was looking to be different than Dynamite. So, again, it's not perfect. AEW is not perfect. WWE is not perfect. Ring of Honor is not perfect. Speaking of Ring of Honor, they really need to separate those two. And I think that is another problem that AEW has in its hands. There's too much integration between Ring of Honor and AEW. And I'm glad they fucking got Joe away from Ring of Honor and focusing more on AEW, focusing more on the quote unquote main show. Because that's where he belongs. He really does. So I'm glad that they did that. There needs to be more of that. I saw today that Claudio was saying how they need to go back to that soundstage at Universal Studios. So this way Ring of Honor has like a unique feel. Because you don't get that when they're pre-taping the matches before whatever it is, Dynamite or Collision. Stop with that shit. Make it a separate thing. Why did Tony Khan buy Ring of Honor? Was it to prevent WWE from doing it? There's gotta be a clear separation of that, and I think that would help the overall. Let the people who are on the AEW roster dominate that time, that TV time, and we don't need to have Ring of Honor. Let it be its own separate thing and build that brand and make it like a true feeder system for AEW. Much in the same way that NXT does for Raw and for SmackDown. So, listen, again, AEW isn't perfect, and I'm offering my constructive criticism as somebody who has watched almost every single episode of Dynamite and Collision and almost every single pay-per-view. Like, I've watched a lot of AEW. I've watched a lot of wrestling, in my life. Definitely more than 10,000 hours. That's for damn sure. I can tell you that for a fact. In my life, it has been more than 10,000 hours. So I can tell you exactly what I like and what I don't like. Speaking of what I don't like, Survivor Series. Overall, I thought it was a solid show. My problem with watching it is that it's WWE. And I think I've been so, I don't want to say trained, I've been so used to watching the way AEW does things that when I watch WWE now, it's a little cringy. And I'll give you the perfect example. That fucking Ruffles commercial. And the return and R-Truth there. God, that was the shit that drove me fucking crazy and why I stopped watching. Is that stuff like right there. It gave me 24/7 title vibes. It gave me chasing that fucking stupid golden egg vibes. I hated that. New Day coming out with the Slim Jim stuff. Fucking hated that. I hate being advertised to in that way during a show like that. Oh, also, there just happens to be a fucking camera backstage, you know? Oh, because AEW doesn't really do that anymore. They do that every once in a blue moon, but everything that happens backstage, it's an interview. Or, oh, hey, bring this camera over here. I want to show you something. I've asked for this time for Tony Khan to talk about this or talk about that. Or the way they were utilizing, quote-unquote, Brandon Cutler to film segments for the Elite backstage. You do things one way. I'm sorry. I've been seeing things done this one way for so long with AEW that when you go back and watch the other side and how they're still doing that and the fucking cutting of the angles during a match, oh God, why are we still doing that? I don't get it. Anyway, back to the matches. I will say this, and I've said this to myself about Royal Rumble, and I'm going to say it again about War Games. Having two of the same kind of matches in the same pay-per-view, I don't like it. I just don't like it. It's too much. It's supposed to be a special match that you do every once in a while to blow off a feud. To have two of them in the span of 3 hours, and they were each about 45 minutes long, it's just too much. The problem that I have with War Games matches and with Blood and Guts matches is that the match doesn't really start until everybody's out of the cages, and then the real shit begins. Up until then, it's just kind of filler, and I kind of don't like that. I don't like the way they do that. And here's the other problem. Where the fuck was the blood? This is War Games, man. This is supposed to be like brutal matches. And I'm not saying you're going to have Bailey drinking Charlotte's blood or anything like that. But we just came off of this fantastic Texas death match between Paige and Swerve. And I gotta sit there and watch this War Games match that doesn't have any blood? What? That seems crazy to me. It took me out of it a little bit, I have to say. And I'm not saying you need blood in every match. No. I am saying if you're going to have this brutal match in War Games, there's got to be something. Got to be something more than EO putting a fucking trash can over her and jumping off the top of the cage. Like, come on. What are we doing here? I thought the ending of both matches was just like anticlimactic. I don't know, man. Maybe it's because I haven't been watching WWE programming, but I just thought it was just anticlimactic. I'll be curious to see how things change in WWE with CM Punk now involved. And even that at the end, it was such a short thing. He comes out, nobody says anything. It was just, you had him standing, at the top of the ramp. I don't know. The whole thing was just weird to me. And then apparently, I didn't watch the promo on Monday, but apparently that kind of rang hollow. And I'm sorry. You can't do that. You can't have that moment twice. You know what I mean? Punk had it the first time on Rampage after being gone for so long. That was a moment, man. No matter what you say, no matter what you think about either company, that Punk thing was a fucking moment. And I still watch that. I still watch that on YouTube. I will sit there and watch that. Because that was just great television. It really was. It really, really was great television. You can't sit there and deny that it wasn't. Because it was. It was great television when he came back. From everything I heard about Monday, that wasn't. But I'll be curious to see kind of what happens, post-Survivor Series going forward. I want to see where Cody plays into this whole thing. I can't believe that you didn't have Roman Reigns or LA Knight at Survivor Series. That fucking blows my mind. And it's funny because I mentioned the LA Knight thing to a buddy of mine, and he was like, oh shit, I didn't even notice that he wasn't there. And that's a bad thing. He said that it's a bad thing. It is a bad thing. This guy is hot. I mean, somebody correct me. Is he not hot anymore as far as his popularity? And the dude was nowhere to be found on the show? That's fucking crazy to me. Like, how does that happen? I'll be curious if he's on SmackDown tomorrow. I don't know if I'm going to watch that. But now I'm recording all this wrestling. You know? I got all this stuff to kind of like watch now that I'm doing the podcast. So that's going to be interesting, and I feel like the road to WrestleMania has already started. So, and I'm excited about that. I really am. It's been a while since I've really hunkered down and watched the road to WrestleMania. So that is going to be interesting. And that's going to do it for the wrestling portion of the podcast. And I will be right back to talk about video games. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Nerd Federation podcast. This is episode 2. I am your host, Will Hernandez, and it's time to get into the video game portion of this podcast. And I have to say, I had to take advantage of some Black Friday stuff. Let me take a sip of water here. I'm not going to steal somebody's gimmick, but as Taz would say when he was hosting a Taz show, that would be a little water break Jones right there. But yeah, so I mentioned Black Friday stuff, and the reason why I usually don't buy physical media anymore. It's just not something that I do as much as old school as I am in certain things, being 44 years old. There are still, I don't know, I'm a big technology person. So if I can buy something digitally, I'm usually going to do it because it's easy. I mean, it's as simple as that. But usually when it comes to stuff, if there's a really good deal on something, I will get it physically. And we have this thing in my family every year, and it's worked out pretty well the older I've gotten, because it just makes sense where my mom and stepfather will give us a check for X amount of dollars, and then we go about and buy our own gifts, get them delivered to my mom's house in Jersey, and then come Christmas morning, we get those gifts, and they're wrapped and we open them up, and that's just kind of the way Christmas has gone in the Hernandez household for quite some time. And yes, it's anticlimactic, but when you've got other members of your family, like I'll get stuff from my brother or my sister or their side of the house, and then I'll get stuff from my girlfriend. I don't know any of that stuff. So there is some. There are some surprises with Christmas, but not necessarily from the stepfather and my mother. So what I usually do is I will buy stuff, physical games, because we usually get the check at Thanksgiving dinner. I deposit it right away because I know Black Friday's the next day, and then you got Cyber Monday, and obviously now. It's kind of crazy how the deals last for weeks now. They start weeks in advance and last almost through the first week of December. And then there were just multiple deals happening throughout December. And then you got your end of the year sales. So let me see what is on sale. And I knew Final Fantasy XVI was on sale. I think it was on sale for $40. So I picked that up, really looking forward to playing that one. I also bought Midnight Suns, and that's always been a game that's intrigued me. I don't really know much about the genre of the game. It's it's that strategy, if I'm not mistaken. So I'll be curious to see how I like that style of game. Pick that up. I picked up Robocop, which wasn't on sale because it's so brand new, but I am a Robocop mark. So the fact that they were coming out with that game, I was going to buy it no matter what, even if it got bad reviews. But it's done, it's gotten pretty decent reviews. It's sold over, I'm away from my microphone now because I'm looking up the Metacritic score for Robocop Rogue City Metacritic. It's funny because on Steam it's got a rating of 9 out of 10 out of 4,074 views. So that's pretty fucking good. Let's see, what's the Metacritic? It sits at a 72, but it seems that 8.6 by users, so it's generally more favorable from a user perspective. But I'll usually go with those Steam reviews go, because I kind of put more weight into those a little bit. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I mean, that's probably a game I'll finish within a week for how short it's supposed to be. Let's see, how long to beat. Oh, here we go. 8.5 hours. I mean, shit. They're saying double that if you're gonna get 100%, but I don't really do that. But I mean, 8.5 hours, man. That's what's crazy? That's double the length of the Modern Warfare 3 campaign, and that game costs millions and millions of dollars to make. So go figure. The video game industry is a funny fucking industry, as is professional wrestling, which is why I love both of them. Anyway. Also, Super Mario Wonder, I don't play my Switch enough, so I thought to myself, hey, here's this opportunity to buy this game really for free, when I think about it that way. So looking forward to that, looking forward to playing a 2D Mario game that's gotten, obviously, rave reviews. So it should be, I'm looking forward to that stash coming in. Obviously, my backlog is just fucking insane right now. I think everybody's backlog is insane. Is that pretty much the way it works? The frustrating thing, I think, for me is that I've only beaten 4 games this year, even though I've played more than that. And I look back at last year. I started. The funny thing is, I started keeping this list because I thought I was going to start doing this podcast last year. But here are the games that I went through last year that I beat, that I quote-unquote rolled credits on. Halo Infinite. To be fair, I started that in late 2021. Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. Mass Effect 2. I had beaten Mass Effect 1 in 2021 because of the Legendary Edition. Horizon Forbidden West, Spec Ops The Line, finally got through that. Mass Effect 3, Stray, Till Dusk Falls, I forget. The Xbox game that was like the story game, like Telltale, which I actually really enjoyed. And then Cyberpunk 2077, I finally got around to playing that, and I don't know. I was very lukewarm on that game, but I definitely want to play Phantom Liberty and do a whole new playthrough with that. God knows when I'll be able to actually get to that, but TBD on that. So 2023, God of War Ragnarok, which I started in late 2022, but finished in 2023. Hogwarts Legacy, this is this year now. Fallen Order, which was I love when I go back, I can knock off something from the backlog, and then Spider-Man 2. But don't forget, I put 40, 50 something hours into Starfield before I got severely sidetracked by Spider-Man. 2, so my goal is I'm playing through Alan Wake 2. Alan Wake Remastered. Gonna finish that. I gotta finish Firewatch, which I'm almost done with. So that's gonna put me at 6 for the year. And then last year, what did I do? I think 9. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 6. That's not bad. I'm almost kind of catching up here at the end of the year. I figure Robocop I can blow through. That's 7. Will I be able to finish Starfield? I mean, I want to beat the main campaign. And that's 25 to 30 hours. I think that's doable. But I think I'm going to play Starfield a little bit differently this time around. So I'm looking forward to that. To doing that. So I could get to 9 this year, which would be fucking something, because there were games that I played that I started that I just did not like. Atomic Heart. Bah, did not like that. Redfall, out of sheer curiosity. God, that shit was... I do want to go back and kind of see what it became. The other game that I need to finish, that I might be able to knock out by the end of the year, is Evil West. I started that game. I have started that game now 2 different times. I'm going to have to start it one more time, because it's one of those games where you have to kind of play it through because of the mechanics, and I'll forget how everything works. So I'm going to have to go through that again. But it, depending how the rest of this year plays out, it's going to be December 1st. Work slows down. That week that we have between Christmas and New Year's is usually just, make sure you're checking your email type of week, because there really isn't anything going on. I wish my company would just shut down and make it official, but I get it. So I should be able to really do some damage this month. We'll see. I got to focus on that. But combine that with all the wrestling and shit like that, who the fuck really knows? So the goal next year, start talking about 2024 stuff, finish a game a month. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that, but that is the plan. And I feel like if I stick to titles on the shorter side, I should be able to do that, with the exception of like a Final Fantasy XVI. Obviously, that's going to take me 35 to 40 hours to complete. I'm trying to think like what else is coming out next year. And then there's a ton of shit that came out this year that I never got to play. I want to play through the Dead Space remake. I played through... Oh, I'm you know what? 20... So here's the thing with Dead Space, the original. I played through it earlier this year. Loved it. But the way that final boss went, I just could not for the life of me get through it. So that is another one that's kind of hanging there that I played this year. So I played more than and plus, I'll occasionally play Vampire Survivors, because I do really like that game a lot. Just like a nice kind of chill game. No, I do that. I would sometimes do that late at night and just sit on the couch and play a run or two before I went to bed. So again, I almost played 15 games this year when you think about it. Just finishing it just didn't really happen. I'm so jealous of people who basically, I don't know, what did Randolph Thor say a couple of weeks ago? He's gone through 35 games this year. Like, holy fuck, man. I wish I had that type of time, because I love that medium so much. Water break here. Hold on. So yeah, a lot of, and as you can see, listen, I'm gaming on all 3 systems, man. I don't give a shit, really. I might prefer Xbox because I'm such a Halo guy and a Gears guy, and I have an affinity for those franchises. But I'll play on anything. If the game is good, I'm gonna play on whatever system it's available on. So don't come at me with this console fanboy bullshit, because I'm not gonna stand for it. It's stupid. It's fucking childish beyond belief, and I just can't believe the shit that I see out there on Twitter. It is fucking utterly ridiculous, and you people come off as psychopaths. Anyway, Speaking of a psychopath topic, my God, this whole Xbox tax thing is just ridiculous. I can't. It's hold on as I'm trying to do my timestamp here. It's just crazy. You know what the problem is with GarageBand is that it goes, instead of doing 60, it goes to like the hour. So maybe I'm gonna have to just write my timestamp as 1.00. What are we at right now? 01? Jeez. Yeah, professional podcast, everyone. Anyway. I don't know. I don't know what to think about this. I mean, as somebody who has gamed primarily on Xbox since the Xbox came out, and you look at the state of things now, is there a bias? I think there definitely is. I mean, you can see it. You can see it in the coverage. You can see it in the way that Xbox is discussed in different mediums. And look, everybody has a bias. Media, no matter what. Content creators have a bias. Media has a bias. No matter how impartial you say you are, there is bias there. There's always going to be bias there. I have biases. Even as a reporter, I had them. When trying to be as impartial as possible, you tend to lean certain ways depending on who you are. So I wish journalism, as somebody who's a former journalist, would be more transparent about that whole thing. So do I think this Xbox tax is real? Yes and no. Yes, in the sense of, I think they get an unfair shake because I think that people just don't understand what they are doing, because when you look at the reviews of major third-party games, everything is played on PS5. That's just the reality. Listen, Xbox lost the last generation. They technically lost the last two, but we know they were leading for most of that Xbox 360 era and versus PS3. I get that. And they really did have a good launch lineup for Xbox One. But you know the story by now. The whole, always have to be connected, and the whole thing with the Connect, and it was a fucking mess. And it's just kind of funny, the irony, where now, oh yeah, leave your machine on all the time, or, oh, always be connected to the internet for things. The fact that we have all these streaming apps available on these machines now. Like, Xbox started that shit. They really did. So, thank you. You're welcome. Anyway, I mean, I see what people are saying about this tax that exists. I think to say that there's not some kind of bias, I think is foolish in many ways. Because I do think that there is, listen, PlayStation right now, they are the dominant force in video games right now, despite the fact that they only really put out one first-party game this past year, I should say, which was Spider-Man 2. Next year, we have no fucking idea what is happening. We might know more next week, as I'm thinking about putting out that special episode next week after the Game Awards. So you might get 2 episodes next week. How I number those remains to be seen. But anyway, it's just the reality of the situation. And Xbox has nobody to blame but themselves for the way they handled the last generation. Because the way they handled it turned a lot of Xbox gamers off, or gamers off in general, and they went ahead and probably got a PS4 Pro late. And then when the PS5 came out, boom, you had them hook, line, and sinker. That's why they have sold already millions of fucking copies. And now the success, how success is viewed at Microsoft/Xbox is through Game Pass subscriptions. Which, by the way, there was a lot of talk today about, Xbox wants to be on everything and even have Game Pass on PlayStation or Switch. Where the fuck were you people? Like, this has been a talking point of being everywhere for at least the past couple of years. This is nothing new. And go listen to Colin Moriarty on Last Stand on Sacred Symbols. He's been banging that drum for the past 2 years. Maybe even more than that. Saying that he thinks that Game Pass is eventually going to be on PlayStation. And have this curated PlayStation only Game Pass subscription where you're going to get Halo and Diablo and maybe even Call of Duty, the Obsidian games. All this first party stuff is going to probably go into the Game Pass on the PlayStation. Why? That's not a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. You can still have your box, your console, and still your Xbox console if you prefer that ecosystem. Now, if they go ahead and get out of the ecosystem, get out of the console market, that's a different story. Then yeah, PlayStation 1, but I don't think anybody's ready to throw in the flag on that just yet. So I just think people need to fucking chill the fuck out. Chill. We're talking about video games. Let's have some fun with this. I'm having fun doing this podcast. Just talking into my microphone and talking to all of you. Hopefully there'll be more of you as the weeks go on. And that's on me to better promote the podcast. But word of mouth does help. So if you listen to this and you like it and you feel like I have good things to say, please, by all means, share this with a friend. And, let's get this... Let's try to be a little bit more positive. I know positivity doesn't really sell well on the internet, but I think that we can be positive while also being able to constructively criticize something and not do it in a mean-spirited way. Sometimes my New York is going to come out. That's just natural. But that's just the way it's going to be. So let's all chill out. Let's all take a step back and put some things into perspective, man. Video games are great. Same goes for pro wrestling. This fanboy stuff just has to fucking stop it because it's getting annoying. And you know what the thing is, now as I'm going off on a tangent? It's really hurting both genres with the more mainstream. It really is. Because the more you people act like fucking animals and uncivilized swine, the more people are gonna put their glasses down their nose and look over the top and be like, these gamers, these pro wrestling fans, it seems like they hate the things that they proclaim to love because of the way they talk about a federation or a plastic box. Chill the fuck out, man. Just chill out. Boy, that was that was a tangent. So this is going to be short because honestly, I'm not really playing anything right now. I told my girlfriend tomorrow that we don't have anything planned for after work. Listen, it's been a tough 2 weeks because it's been a busy 2 weeks. I had to put my cat down. It'll be 2 weeks from yesterday, from tomorrow, from December 1st. So I had to deal with that. That happened 2 days before my girlfriend moved in to where I'm living now. So we were busy with that. busy getting that done. Then we had to get ready for our trip to Montreal for Thanksgiving. So Kat dies, right? She moves in, prep for Montreal, Thanksgiving, going to driving to two houses, one in the Bronx and then one in New Jersey. Get back home, got to pack a little bit, and then drive up to Montreal. We were there through Monday morning, Monday afternoon. Drive back. By the way, took us a little bit over 90 minutes to get through the fucking border back into New York because our good US of A only had 2 fucking lanes open. Like, what? It was insane. They had 2 lanes open. Two. I think I'm going to have to look into the Nexus thing next time we go. I couldn't believe it. Meantime, the Canadian border had, I think, like 4 lanes open. Like, come on. What are we doing here? What are we doing? Anyway, come back from Montreal this past Monday. You know, we're tired of shit. Tuesday comes, work. Actually, we were off. But I had a ton of stuff to do. And just on and on and on. Listen, I work a 40 to 50 hour job every week. So I'm busy with the day stuff. Sometimes I just don't get enough time to play. But that's okay because it's going to change starting tomorrow night and into the weekend. So, gonna finish Alan Wake Remastered, like I said. Then I'm going to jump into finishing Firewatch. And then I got a decision to make. Do I jump into and do the Starfield run and get that out of the way? I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to almost mainline the Starfield, the main campaign Starfield now. Since I've already put in like 40 hours and finished one of the faction lines, I kind of already know what's happening with some of those. So I think if I mainline the campaign, the main story, that I should be done with the game near Christmas. That's kind of the goal. And then what I'm going to do is, I think Starfield's always going to be my side game to where I go back and, spend like an hour or so cleaning up side things until the DLC comes out. And then I'm going to have my main game. Whether that's going to be Final Fantasy XVI or, like I said, a Robocop. I think Starfield, because I do enjoy Starfield. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. You can't tell me what I think is good because I need to see it for myself and play it for myself and experience it for myself. So let's chill out a little bit with hating on things that people like or love. Because I think it's silly. The thing is, I used to do that back in the day, but then I grew up. It's a big thing to grow up and to be mature and to just chill out and just keep your mouth shut. That's what I do. It's not that hard. There are a million things that people like that I absolutely fucking hate. But I don't sit there criticizing people for it. I just keep my mouth shut and enjoy the shit that I enjoy. Because I don't like when people sit there and criticize the things that I like. And I like 2 genres that get mocked. So guys, again, and ladies, please keep that in mind. It's really the guys. You guys are awful. Please, please, please keep that stuff in mind going forward. Just chill out, please. Anyway, that is going to do it for this week and episode number 2. Really looking forward to next week because we get the Game Awards next Thursday. They'll be over by the time, at this time next week. So, oh man, I am so looking forward. I'm not really looking forward to the awards. I couldn't give 2 shits about that. I'm more looking forward to what's going to get announced so we have something to talk about. And I really hope Microsoft is going to be showing stuff, Xbox is going to be showing stuff off. I really hope that PlayStation shows some stuff off. Probably not Nintendo, but I think, next year is going to be another good to great year, I think, for both video games and pro wrestling. And I think a lot of it starts next week, man. We got some good things happening next week. Adam Copeland versus Christian Cage for the TNT title in Canada, in Montreal, where I just was. Game Awards on Thursday. Next week is going to be cool. There's going to be a lot for me to talk about. So stay tuned for that next week. Follow me on social media. I am at nerdfedpod.com. Wait, I'm sorry. That's the handle, nerdfedpod. Is that right? Is that what my thing is on X? Oh my God. Yeah, it's Nerdfed Podcast. Oh my God. With my 4 followers that I have right now. Kind of pathetic. Really, really pathetic. So, but yeah, looking forward to it. Follow me on X. I am going to start slowly working on. Right now, I'm trying to get the YouTube page channel going, and then Instagram. And I was doing some reading about TikTok today, and my God, that might be my next thing to conquer. But okay, this has gone on long enough. I will see you next week, and have a great weekend, and we will talk soon. Take care. Bye.